T9C got the fucking juice.
Silver's the new gold.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I'm your host, JT. On tonight's episode, I'm going to be giving you guys my NFL Week 14 predictions. We're going to be talking about and giving predictions for the NFL games that I find the most interesting. Nick Saban's, the whole prep time thing with him, I'm getting a little bit aggravated with it. I saw somebody on Twitter tweet out, Nick Saban with 1 month to prep for Michigan. JJ McCarthy better watch out. Like, let me tell you guys why it doesn't really matter. Also going to get into some news around the league. The Carolina Panthers had a Hunger Game-like culture. Zach Wilson is starting to get into some more things as well. Before we begin, leave a like, subscribe to the channel. Remember that every episode of the podcast that's available on the channel is available in audio format on all podcasting platforms. Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcasts from. You can find the JT Sports Podcast. Give us a 5-star review on Apple and Spotify. Share the pod with your friends, family members, and acquaintances if you enjoy. And let's get into it. So, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are taking on the Falcons this Sunday. The first time these two teams played, the Atlanta Falcons won 16-13. And if the Falcons win this game, they take a pretty solid lead for the NFC South Division. Meanwhile, the Buccaneers, they could tie for first place with a win. The Atlanta Falcons, they beat the Jets the last time they played. And this team offensively is not that great, due in part to Desmond Ridder not being that good. He has problems taking care of the football. The defense has played really well, even with the injury to Grady Jarrett. And this is most likely going to be a defensive battle. You see, Tampa Bay, offensively, they haven't really been that bad, but at the same time, they've been in the middle of the pack offensively. And this game is going to come down to which team can take better care of the football, meaning that if you're the Atlanta Falcons, you need to make sure that Desmond Ridder doesn't turn the freaking football over. That's been the biggest issue that he's had, especially in the red zone. And this most likely is going to be a game that comes down to defense, meaning that you can't afford any costly turnovers from Desmond Ridder. Baker Mayfield, the reason why he's been better than Desmond Ridder this season is because not only has he taken better care of the football, but he's also been pretty dependable in late game situations. The team that I got to take the win, I'm going with the Bucs. The Falcons won the first matchup. I believe that the Buccaneers are going to even up the score. Listen, they have the quarterback that takes better care of the football. Both teams are going to have great defenses. The Buccaneers defense has a couple of injuries that they've been dealing with. Two of their starting linebackers have been out. Devin White is on the injury report. Levante David is as well. Even with the injuries that they've had, the majority of the games that they've lost, they've been fairly competitive in. Even against the 49ers, they only lost to them by 2 touchdowns. So you look at the Atlanta Falcons, the fact that they have an issue with Desmond Ridder taking care of the football. I don't trust him in a game like this. That's going to come down to defense, and ball security is key. Give me the Buccaneers to get the win. Broncos, Chargers. The Chargers defense has played better over the last couple of weeks. But is it going to be good enough for them to get the win against the Denver Broncos, who were on a 5-game win streak prior to losing to the Houston Texans last week? Denver is a team that they're starting to play their best football. But the big Achilles heel with this offense is this offensive line. Their offensive line was getting demolished by Will Anderson and the pass rush of the Houston Texans last week. And you got to be really concerned about how they're going to hold up against the Chargers pass rush with Khalil Mack having an all-pro caliber season. And the pass rush has been the biggest strength of this Chargers defense. Now, this Chargers defense has played better over the last few weeks, but it still hasn't been all that good. Denver's offense, though, it's been better than what it was last season under Nathaniel Hackett, but it still hasn't been nothing to write home about. This is an offense that isn't going to put up 28 to 30 plus on you. They're an offense that they play within the numbers. Russell Wilson wants to get the ball out fast, and they're pretty efficient. And the rushing attack can be serviceable at times. The Chargers offensively, though, over the last couple of weeks, I don't know what the hell has happened to Kellen Moore's offense. They just look out of sorts. They barely could score any points against Baltimore. They only scored 20 against the Green Bay Packers. They scored 6 last week against New England. The Chargers defense, you look at them giving up 70 points against the Miami Dolphins early in the season, and you pretty much have made your mind up about this defense being terrible. But ever since they gave up 70, this defense has improved tremendously under their defensive coordinator. And the LA Chargers, You wonder if this is going to be a game where they finally are able to figure out their offense. Their offense has way too much talent for it to be stalling out the way that it has. Justin Herbert is still a really good quarterback. I may not view him as a top 5 quarterback based on how he's played at times during this season, but still a top 10 quarterback. The offensive line is really good. You got Austin Eckler. You still got a really good group of receivers. Even though Quentin Johnston is a bust and he doesn't know how to catch the damn football, this offense is way too talented to be having the limited production that it's been having over the last few weeks. This Broncos defense is playing exceptionally well, and the coaching advantage. I don't trust Brandon Staley in a game like this. Anytime the Chargers have went up against a good team or a team that's well coached, they haven't won. Even though it may seem like the Chargers are the team that you should go with because they're a 3-point favorite, I think Vegas is trying to steal your money. You really going to put your faith in Brandon Staley? This dude is the worst coach in the NFL. The Chargers have underachieved every single season under him. And who cares if their defense has played better over the last couple of weeks? You got to go with Sean Payton. The coaches that are bad normally lose around this time of the season when they are going up against a really good coach. You saw last week when the Detroit Lions started out 21-0 against the New Orleans Saints, and New Orleans came back and made that a game, but Detroit still won. And the main reason why Detroit won is because Dan Campbell was just a better coach than Dennis Allen. With these bad coaches, if you notice a trend, they don't win consistently against well-coached football teams. You can't judge this game all on talent. On paper, the Chargers should be a playoff team. They should damn near be a Super Bowl contender, but they're not. So you really going to trust them to beat Sean Payton, a better coached football team? Yeah, miss with the whole talent argument. Who cares? Brandon Staley isn't good. And when you got a bad coach, you're not going to be able to win games against well-coached football teams. Give me the Broncos 24-13 as my final score prediction. I saw something on Twitter that said that Michigan should be worried because Nick Saban has a month to prepare for them. And I've heard this narrative thrown out about Nick Saban nearly every single year Alabama's in the playoffs. It's similar to the whole Batman argument that they make. Oh, Batman can beat anybody as long as you give him time to prepare. And we get that Nick Saban is a really good planner. He's really good at preparation. His teams are normally really well prepared in playoff matchups. But this is the most talented team that Alabama has ever faced in the first round of the semifinals since they lost to Ohio State when they had Cardale Jones. You see, the last previous times that Alabama has been in the playoffs, they've cruised in the first round because they haven't played nobody that has been able to truthfully rival them in talent. Remember, they beat Cincinnati in 2020, Michigan State, Washington, Notre Dame 1 year, Oklahoma. They don't really play teams as good as what Michigan is. Michigan, this season, they're good enough to rival the talent that Alabama has. Now, I'm not knocking Nick Saban for how good of a coach he is. We know that he's going to have this team ready to play. But let's stop at making it seem like he's just invincible in the first round. Jim Harbaugh, I'm definitely sure that he learned from his lesson last year when Michigan got outcoached by TCU and they got upset. You really think that Jim Harbaugh is about to come into this game ill-prepared? Nick Saban, yes, we know that he's been here before, but his first-round games in the past have been against inferior opponents, rival to the talent that Alabama has. This Michigan squad that they have rolling in here is just as good as Alabama, and they kind of have a similar playing style. They both win with great defense. Their passing attacks don't light the world on fire, but they have quarterbacks that are good enough. Although I will say that JJ McCarthy is the slightly better quarterback than Jalen Milroe, because he's a more effective passer. But Jalen Milroe is such a dynamic athlete that Michigan, how are they going to fare against that? Because they haven't seen a quarterback with this kind of athleticism all season long. Nick Saban, we get that he's a great coach and all, but we got to stop trying to make it seem like Michigan doesn't have a shot in this thing. Okay, we know that Nick Saban is a god when it comes to preparation. We get that. But to make it seem like this dude having a month to prepare is going to be a huge reason why Michigan is going to lose this game, I think it's nonsense. This is going to be a really good game. It can go either way. The last time I checked the spread for this game, Michigan was only a 1.5 point favorite. When this game initially got released, when it first came out, Michigan was a 2-point favorite. Both of these teams are evenly matched. I think that both of these coaches and the coaching staffs that they have are on par with each other. This is going to be a game that comes down to defense and which quarterback is going to be able to make the bigger plays. We got to stop making it seem like Jim Harbaugh is this novice coach. This is somebody that took a team to the Super Bowl before. Michigan has came up short in the semifinals before, and we all think back to that TCU performance when they got outcoached by Sonny Dykes and that staff. I'm definitely have a lot of confidence that Jim Harbaugh is going to have this Michigan team ready to play. It doesn't really mean too much that Nick Saban has a month to prepare. He had a month to prepare a while back in 2014, and he lost to a backup quarterback in Urban Meyer and Cardale Jones, and they went on to win the national championship eventually. So it's not like Nick Saban has never lost in the playoffs before. As I said earlier, he's never played a team in the first round as talented as what Michigan is since 2014 Ohio State. I don't think that anybody playing Michigan should be ultimately worried about Nick Saban having a month to prepare. It doesn't really mean too much because Jim Harbaugh, he has a month to prepare also. If you haven't already, leave a like, subscribe to the channel. We're not done yet. We're not even close to done. We got a lot more games to break down. We got to talk some more NFL topics. You know, Zach Wilson is a starting quarterback again. There's a lot of things that we got to get into. Remember that every episode of the podcast is uploaded. That's uploaded on the YouTube channel. It's available in audio format on all podcasting platforms. Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcast from. You can find the JT Sports Podcast and rate us 5 stars if you enjoy this episode. The LA Rams are heading on the road to Baltimore to take on the Ravens off a bye week. Baltimore plays their best football at home. They dismantled the Seattle Seahawks and the Detroit Lions in Baltimore not too long ago. The Rams are really hot, but they have a major disadvantage in this game. Their offense is really talented. And they got some really talented young players on this offense outside of Cooper Kupp. We know about Puka Nacua, who's been the best rookie wide receiver this year. They got running back Kyron Williams back. He's been causing hell the last few weeks. The Ravens defense, though, is the best in the NFL statistically. They got a lot of talent on the pass rush. They got a really good secondary. And it's been really hard to move the ball on this defense. And when you think back to some of the Rams' more embarrassing losses that they've had this season, when they got blown out by Dallas. Well, I wouldn't say they got blown out by Dallas, but, you know, that game wasn't really close. And they also lost to Green Bay 3-20. Against the Dallas Cowboys, it was 20-43. And against the Eagles, it was 14-23. When this offense has gone up against talented defenses, they struggled. The Ravens are a 7-point favorite, for the reason that anytime they've played at home, they've looked super dominant. Their only notable home loss that I can remember from this season was when they lost to the Cleveland Browns in a really weird game. You see, the problem with the Ravens is that they get themselves in trouble when they don't play efficiently. When they're turning the football over, they're not able to run the football effectively. Yeah, we know that Todd Monken, being their offensive coordinator, has elevated the passing game and Lamar Jackson's passing ability to an extent that we've never seen before. But let me ask you this. Do you know who leads the NFL in rushing yards per game? It's the Baltimore Ravens. And when they lost to the Browns, what were they unable to do? Run the football. Can the Rams slow down the rushing attack of Baltimore and force them to put this ball in the air, and maybe the receivers have one of those games when they're dropping passes? Is this a game where Lamar Jackson kind of comes up a little bit small? He hasn't really been asked to do a whole lot relative to that game against Cincinnati. When the Ravens are at their best, they're running the football, and they got really good running backs. Now, can the Rams, are they capable of being able to slow down the run game? Because I'm pretty confident that they're not going to be able to. We saw how this run defense played against the Browns, and this defense got shredded up by Joe Flacco. This defense is going to have their best performance of the year, and you're also going to need your offense to hold up their end of the bargain, going against the best defense in the league. And I strongly doubt that that's going to be able to happen. I like the Ravens to win. I like them to cover that -7. I'll take them 31-13 is my final score prediction in this game. The Rams are in for a really tough game. Sean McVay is a really good coach, but you can only scheme up so many things when you're at a major talent disadvantage like this. And one thing we know about this Ravens defense is that unless this offense just completely implodes on themselves and they have a lot of turnovers, this defense probably isn't going to give up any more than 14, 17 points at the most. So I like the Ravens to win. I don't think this game is going to be pretty close at all. Jags, Browns. Do you know that the Browns are one of the best teams in the NFL when it comes to winning at home? They've only suffered one home loss this season. The Jaguars, they're the best road team in the league. They haven't lost a road game yet. And it's odd how the Jags play their best football on the road relative to how they play at home. We saw Trevor Lawrence have a nasty injury Monday night against the Cincinnati Bengals in a loss. He has a high ankle sprain. Reports coming around say that he's going to be doing round-the-clock rehabilitation, and he could play in this game. There's like a 60-40 chance that he does, 60% chance that he does, 40% chance that he doesn't. And if he plays in this game, going against Myles Garrett in this really talented Browns defense that has had a tremendous turnaround under Jim Schwartz in his first season as their defensive coordinator, is his lack of mobility going to be a hindrance for the Jaguars offensive line that hasn't really played that good this season? Jacksonville is a team that can be really up and down at times. When Trevor Lawrence gets pressure in his face, he's not that great. He's a quarterback that at times, when the pass rush really gets after him, he gets rattled. The Browns got a really great defense. We don't know what the hell to expect from the offense. Joe Flacco looked good against the Rams. The Jaguars gave up a really big day or a really big night to Jake Browning, the Bengals backup filling in for Joe Burrow. Their pass defense has been their Achilles heel all season long. Their secondary is not good. Josh Allen's their only consistent pass rusher. Trayvon Walker, he can't get consistent pressure on the QB. He's a bust. The lack of pass rush for Jacksonville could hurt them in this game. Their run defense is arguably the best in the NFL. They're top 5 against the run. But Cleveland, they've showed last week that they're not afraid to ask Joe Flacco to throw the football downfield. They're not just doing check down passes. They're trying to push the football down vertically. Just because they just picked up Joe Flacco and he may not have a lot of the playbook down pack doesn't mean that they're going to have the same style play that they did with DTR and PJ Walker. You see, when those two guys were in that quarterback, they were calling plays, not trying to force the issue because they were scared that they were going to turn the football over. They trust Joe Flacco a lot more than how they did with PJ and DTR. This is a Jaguars secondary that, if you're Kevin Stefanski, you feel no problem asking Joe Flacco to throw the football 25 or more times. This is a secondary that hasn't proven to be able to slow anybody down. With the way that Jay Brown was looking Monday night, like the great value brand version of Joe Burrow, we could see Joe Flacco replicate a similar performance like he had last week. You see, the Browns, they got to be able to close out these close games. They can't have any costly turnovers. Even with the not fully healthy Trevor Lawrence at the helm, if he plays, you still feel really confident that the Jags offense should be able to at least get 20 on this Browns defense. Now, if Trevor Lawrence isn't able to play, and they got to throw in their backup quarterback, I'm trying to remember the name who they had in last week. I believe it was CJ Beathard. It's going to be really daunting for this offense to move the football. This is one of the best defenses in the NFL. They don't give up a lot of big plays. They're really good at forcing turnovers at really big moments like they did against the Ravens. And this is a win-win game for both of these teams. So Browns need to win this game to hang on to the last seed in the AFC. The Texans are right on their behind. The Jaguars need to continue to win so they can hold off the Houston Texans for the division potentially. I got to roll with the Jags to win. I am super confident that Trevor Lawrence is going to play in this game. Even if Trevor Lawrence doesn't play, I still like Jacksonville because I don't believe that the Browns offense is going to be able to sustain the amount of success in the passing game that they had last week against the Rams. Yeah, I know that Jacksonville's secondary hasn't been great, but Joe Flacco is still very new to this offense. He's still learning these teammates, and there are going to be some bumps and bruises in there. So I do expect for him to have a couple of turnovers. The Jags defense, one thing that they have been able to do, even dating back to last year, is that they're really good at forcing takeaways at opportune moments. And I don't think that Joe Flacco is going to be good enough to get the Browns to win. I'm going with Jacksonville to win. I read a report earlier today that said that the Panthers had a Hunger Game-like culture under Frank Reich. There was a lot of finger pointing. Nobody wanted to get thrown to the dogs. Nobody wanted to get thrown under the bus. And this staff pretty much quit on Frank Reich once they saw the writing on the wall and that he was most likely going to end up getting fired before the season started. And this just goes to show you just how big of a clown show this is in Charlotte, North Carolina right now. If you're a Panthers fan, how many times have you taken trips to see the circus play? Because the clowns are out of the bag at this point. And it's really unfortunate that Bryce Young has been put in such a awful situation. I mean, when you got a coaching staff that quits on the coach, and there were some rumors around that said that there was a little bit of animosity towards Frank Reich when he took back the play calling duties. Nobody was really in agreement with it. And this is just a really ugly situation that transpired in Carolina. You know, David Tepper, he's not exempt from any of the blame. This is somebody that doesn't know how to keep his hands from out of the damn cookie jar. If you're going to hire somebody, you got to allow them to do their job. But when you got guys on the coaching staff who are texting the owner behind Frank Reich's back, it's no surprise that the Panthers have been the worst team in the NFL this season. Your coaching staff has turned on each other. Everybody's trying to save their own back. Nobody's trying to come together and unite as a team. This is an organization that lacks leadership, and it starts from up top. Why would the coaches feel comfortable enough to text David Tepper behind Frank Reich's back unless David Tepper didn't have a little bit of saying to some of these coaches in some closed-door conversations? You know, like David Tepper is a meddler, and he probably was messing around. And like I said earlier, you know, this is somebody who is super involved, doesn't know how to keep his hands from out of the cookie jar. He doesn't know how to let his employees be employees. He always has to have a say-so, and he's a control freak at this point. And for a couple of these coaches to be texting him behind Frank Reich's back, I'm pretty confident that there had to be some sneaky conversations going on about Frank Reich's employment. And if these coaches quit on Frank Reich because they knew he was going to get him fired eventually, did you not think that maybe David Tepper could have tipped them off and probably said, you know, like, it's okay, he's not going to be here for too long? Like, this was just a really bad situation. And this is worse than the Urban Meyer fiasco. Urban Meyer won more than one game when he was coaching his first season and his long season in Jacksonville. There's just no leadership. And David Tepper, he's a big problem with this organization. And if you're a Panthers fan, I wouldn't be mad at you for telling him to sell the damn team. He doesn't know how to hire coaches. They can't get it right at quarterback. You got rid of Cam Newton and you haven't gotten it right since. And you gave up so much to get Bryce Young, and Frank Reich just didn't have a vision for him. Had an awful scheme. You look at their general manager, I believe his name is Scott Fitterer, did an awful job of giving Bryce Young the talent around him. It would have made more sense just to trade Brian Burns instead of giving away DJ Moore. Hell yeah, it would have hurt to get rid of Brian Burns. He's not an elite pass rusher, though. He's not a TJ Watt, a Myles Garrett, or a Nick Bosa. He's a B-plus pass rusher. If you're going to invest a number one overall pick and trade up so many assets to get Bryce Young, you might as well invest on that side of the football as well and just say, bump the defense. We need to make sure that our franchise QB succeeds, because having a star quarterback has a way bigger impact on wins and losses than what Brian Burns is going to have. They should have kept DJ Moore, but there's just so much dysfunction that David Tepper said, you know, we got to go ahead and we need to get us a quarterback. And maybe everybody did truly want Bryce Young. But even if that really is the case, they still made an awful decision to get rid of DJ Moore. Frank Reich didn't have a vision, the GM didn't have a vision, and the owner didn't have a vision either. Because you look at Houston had a plan. Just look at all of the draft picks that they hit on. This is one of the best draft classes that the Houston Texans have probably ever have. CJ Stroud is a superstar. Will Anderson is going to be a superstar. Tank Dell has been a stud. Dating back to last year, you got John Mechie, who looks really good. They got another receiver, Nico Collins, who they drafted, who looks really good. They've landed on a lot of their draft picks. Jalen Petrie. Who has Carolina drafted that has been a Pro Bowl caliber player? Derek Brown, maybe? Jeremy Chin? That's about it. Brian Burns? Okay. But they don't have a lot of success in the draft. They don't know how to build a team through the draft, and they're not good in free agency acquisition either. Miles Sanders is probably one of the worst free agency signings of last offseason. And I don't know where to rank him, but he definitely is somewhere in the top 5 of worst signings. This dude is awful. He's not even the best running back on this damn team. There's no surprise that the Carolina Panthers only won one game this season. When you got a culture like this, when everybody's trying to look out for themselves, people's going behind the coach's back, who hired them, who brought them to Carolina to text the owner, being sneaky, everybody's out to get one another, just trying to protect themselves. There's no leadership. There's no teamwork. To succeed as an organization, it has to be one team, one goal. Everybody has to be locked in, has to put their egos aside for the betterment of the team's success. And with this cutthroat mentality that these coaches had on this coaching staff, I know this is a rumor, but there has to be some legitimacy to these reports. Y'all don't think so? David Tepper doesn't know how to be a great leader himself. So it's no surprise that there wasn't no leadership on this staff. And Bryce Young is struggling because of this. You know, like, Hunger Game mentality down there in Charlotte, North Carolina. You know, the circus has been in town for the last 3 months ever since the season started. Hell, even dating back to the preseason, this shit was looking like it was going to be ugly. I remember when Kayvon Thibodeau delivered a clothesline to hell to Bryce Young in their preseason game. This thing was messy from the start. It was looking like this thing wasn't going to work out before the regular season even started. The coaching staff just never had a proper vision and a proper plan in place for building a winning organization. You know, I feel really bad for Bryce Young in this situation. He didn't ask to be here. Who's going to turn down getting drafted #1 overall? If I was Bryce Young, I would have told them, you know, I'm good off y'all. I'd rather go to another organization. I'd rather go to Houston. Shoot, you might have got mad at me and said that I had some character issues, but it's all about where you land. Bryce Young is a really good prospect, or at least he was when he was coming out of Alabama. If you go back and you look at Nick Saban's quotes about Bryce Young, he said that one thing that we have to change is that we were too Bryce Young dependent. Why do you think that he got rid of his whole entire coaching staff? He cleaned house and brought in a whole new coaching staff for this season. And it wasn't just those normally talented Alabama teams that you always see. Those were probably the most least talented teams that Nick Saban has ever had. And they were carried by Bryce Young. Regardless of how smart the dude is, this dude is really accurate, has great anticipation, and he doesn't have any chance of succeeding because he has an offensive line that allows him to get sacked as soon as he gets the football, and his best receiver is 30-something-year-old Adam Thielen, old man Adam Thielen. There was no chance that Bryce Young was going to succeed, especially when you look at how poor this coaching staff was. I mean, just look, they had a Hunger Game-like culture under Frank Reich. Everybody was trying to stab each other in the back. No leadership. And Bryce Young has suffered because of it. You know, like what Thanos said in Avengers Endgame, you couldn't live with your failure. And where did that bring you? Back to Zach Wilson. The New York Jets are back at it again with Zach Wilson at quarterback. He's going to be starting against the Houston Texans this week. Look, we knew that the New York Jets were in a bad situation once Aaron Rodgers went down. They put Zach Wilson on the bench in the fourth quarter of the blowout loss to the Buffalo Bills. They gave Tim Boyle a try. He was terrible. Trevor Siemian was no better. And Zach Wilson at this point, you might as well roll with him because he was no worse than the other two quarterbacks that you had out there. And Zach Wilson has had some okay moments this year. He played the game of his life against the Kansas City Chiefs on Sunday Night Football. In the locker room, probably at this point, they don't give a damn who's at quarterback. You can't even get mad at Zach Wilson anymore because he's better than whatever else you could have put in out there. And they're not going to beat the Houston Texans. They're going to lose. The Texans defense is really good, especially when it comes to forcing turnovers. Zach Wilson, you're just throwing him out there because you got nothing else better. And the least that you could hope that will happen is your defense comes away with a few big takeaways themselves and they can get a few big stops and you can keep this being a low possession football game and maybe Zach Wilson can hit a deep play downfield to Garrett Wilson. Maybe Breece Hall breaks off a big 60, 70-yard touchdown run. This is the worst offense in the NFL. Zach Wilson, he's not the blame for all of the Jets' issues, but he's part of the problem. And he's not part of the solution. And there was a reason why they decided to trade for Aaron Rodgers in the first place. Okay, Aaron Rodgers going down pretty much was the end of the Jets season. They fought and they pulled off a couple of upsets. They beat the Buffalo Bills. They upset the Philadelphia Eagles. But I watched the Miami Dolphins Hard Knocks a couple of days ago. And you know what Mike McDaniel said prior to the Dolphins playing this game on Black Friday? He said that I see a football team that doesn't look like they're having a lot of fun out there. Yeah, when you got a bad quarterback in Zach Wilson, who cares if Zach Wilson is playing better than what he did in previous years? It's still not good enough. He's not good enough to carry this bad offense. When you draft somebody as high as what you did with Zach Wilson, they're supposed to be able to elevate your team. He doesn't do that. As a matter of fact, it's the polar opposite. He brings the team down. You just had a terrible backup quarterback situation that you had so much faith in Zach Wilson. You didn't go out there and get your Gardner Minshew. You didn't trade for Joshua Dobbs. Hell, you could have got Carson Wentz. He's with the LA Chargers. Well, the LA Rams, excuse me. This is going nowhere. Aaron Rodgers, there's a chance that he can play this season if the Jets are in playoff contention, but just be real with yourself, New York fans. Your season was over the moment Aaron Rodgers ruptured his Achilles. And it's a miracle that he's been able to recover from that injury so fast. But once he got injured, all your hope, all your reason to be optimistic about this season went down the drain along with your offense. This offense was tailor-made for Aaron Rodgers. Look at who you got at offensive coordinator. Nathaniel Hackett. This dude hasn't been a good OC anywhere he's called plays. You only signed him because he was Aaron Rodgers' best friend when he was with the Green Bay Packers. You bring in Allen Lazard. You paid him a lot of money in free agency. He hasn't worked out for you. This is what happens when you have a team that was meant for Aaron Rodgers. When he's not there, guess what? It's going to be a disaster. On top of that, the offensive line is one of the worst in the NFL. What more can you expect Zach Wilson to do? Now, he's not great. He overthrows Garrett Wilson constantly. He can't hit accurate receivers inside of the numbers. When you have Zach Wilson at quarterback, it's like going into a game with your hand tied around your back. It's a handicap. And he's better than what you have, but what you have behind Zach Wilson isn't anything to write home about. It's really disappointing that once again the New York Jets are going to waste another talented defense because they can't get the offense right. Zach Wilson, you should have moved on from this dude. You should have hired somebody off the street to come be your QB1. Joe Flacco, his first week starting for the Browns looked really good against the Rams. You mean to tell me that there's nobody on the street who you could bring in and start that can be better than Zach Wilson? You're really throwing this dude back out here again? I saw a rumor that said that he was reluctant to even want to start again. I doubt that's true because he should want to go out there and want to prove himself because it is true. It's more reasons why he isn't a starting caliber quarterback in this league. When you're a starting quarterback in this league, you shouldn't be reluctant to start. You should be wanting to embrace the opportunity to have another chance to prove yourself, to show that you're the future of this franchise. This is a bad situation. Like Daniel said, they failed and they're right back at where they started at. Zach Wilson. You just can't escape this dude. This dude is truly inevitable. They tried to escape him by bringing in Aaron Rodgers, and he gets hurt 3 plays into his tenure with the Jets. Isn't that crazy? This is so crazy that they thought that they upgraded that quarterback, and 3 plays into the season, you're right back at where you were last year. No matter what the New York Jets do, no matter who they bring in, what they try to change, they always end up having to start Zach Wilson as that quarterback every single time. It's like going through a maze where you keep coming back to the start and you can't find an exit. I feel bad for Jets fans, man. You guys are really going through it. You guys haven't had a good quarterback since ever, man. You guys had Mark Sanchez, Sam Darnold, Ryan Fitzmagic for one season. Oh my goodness, you guys just can't catch a break. Holy cow, Zach Wilson is really starting again. I thought this was the last that we saw of this dude. When he got benched after that Buffalo game and the reporters asked him how he felt about the bench, and he was like, I didn't play well. Do you know how demoralizing that has to be as a pro to say that you play bad and yeah, you deserve to be on the bench? And then he's right back out there, man. Oh, my goodness. Indianapolis takes on Cincinnati. This is one of the more underrated games that we have in Week 14. Because believe it or not, the Colts are a playoff team right now. Don't ask me how the hell they are 7-5 without Anthony Richardson. But I'll tell you this. This is a team that you can't afford to have any mistakes, any costly penalties or turnover against them, because they're going to make you pay. But the great thing about Cincinnati is that you don't got to worry about that, because not only are you one of the least penalized teams in the league, but you also are top 3 in turnover margin. You don't turn the football over that often. Jake Browning, this dude was looking like the great value version of Joe Burrow in their Monday night win over the Jacksonville Jaguars. You ever went to Walmart and you go to the cereal aisle, you got the real Fruit Loops on the right side, and then on the left side, you got the great value brand Fruit Loops? Jake Browning is the great value version of Joe Burrow. He doesn't have a ton of athleticism, but he can get outside the pocket and extend the play for a little bit and maybe pick up 3-4 yards with his legs. He's not a burner. He's not going to make nobody miss. He doesn't have Joe Burrow's elusiveness, but he does have really good accuracy. He throws with pretty good anticipation. Look, he looked really rough against the Ravens, but he didn't look terrible. And this is probably one of the better backup quarterbacks that I've seen play this season. You got T. Higgins, Jamar Chase. Your offensive line looks pretty solid over the last couple of weeks. And your defense, if they can step up in this game and slow down Indianapolis' rushing attack, which is going to be asking them a lot to do, because this run defense for Cincinnati has been awful all season long. I mean, last week, you look at how bad they played against the Jaguars. Not just is the run defense bad, but this secondary hasn't been that great. They were getting carved up by Trevor Lawrence, and even when they put in C.J. Beathard, he didn't look half bad. You see, Indianapolis, they aren't going to have Jonathan Taylor again for this game. He's dealing with the injury. He's going to be out for another couple of weeks. But Zach Moss has been a really pleasant surprise. He has 723 rushing yards. He's averaging 4.5 yards per carry, 5 touchdowns. The Bengals' run defense is a huge problem in this game for them. And their secondary. Their secondary isn't playing that great outside of Cam Taylor-Britt. That's been their best cornerback this season. You see, Gardner Minshew, he hasn't been great. And when you think of Gardner Minshew, you think of somebody who's a low-end starter in this league, really quality backup. But he's played like a backup this season. And the Colts, to be honest, have been winning in spite of Gardner Minshew. They're really good on the interior. Offensive line, defensive lines are really great. They got a really good pass rush. But their secondary is prone to giving up big plays. This is a team that, with how well coached they've been by Shane Steichen, they've been able to find ways to win close games, and they just find ways to win. Cincinnati can't have any turnovers. They're the more talented football team. And with Gardner Minshew, the fact that he isn't really great taking care of the football, you're going up against a secondary that's 8th in takeaways. And they're number 1 in turnovers. They don't turn the football over that much. I'm going to take Cincinnati to win. The Colts, they look like a team that probably looks better on paper, and they have won pretty good over their last couple of weeks, or they've had some pretty impressive wins their last few games, but I like Cincinnati because they don't turn the football over. The Colts are one of those teams that they're really opportunistic or opportunist. I don't know how you pronounce the word. I'm going to just say the Colts are opportunists. They're like edge. They just find ways to win games when you give them extra chances. The Bengals don't really do that. They don't have a lot of penalties. They don't turn the football over that much. You got T. Higgins, Jamar Chase. There's a lot of weapons for Jake Browning to throw the football to. I like Cincinnati to win, even though their defense has been not so great during the stretch of their last few games. I still don't trust Gardner Minshew in a game like this against a Lou Anarumo coach defense. Seahawks, 49ers. The 49ers destroyed the Philadelphia Eagles last week. They clobbered the Eagles, and this looks like the best team in the NFL right now, and they're playing their best football. Meanwhile, Seattle, they're in free fall mode. In the same situation that the Seahawks are in right now, losing 4 out of their last 5 games, this was the same exact situation that they were in around this time last season. They backdoored their way into the postseason. Okay, they started out hot last year, just like how they started out fast this season, and then they've been on a cold streak. Now, they looked really good offensively against the Dallas Cowboys Thursday night. For them to pull off this upset, you need that version of Geno Smith that we saw against the Dallas Cowboys in this game, because Geno Smith hasn't been good this season for Seattle. He hasn't been bad, but he's been a middle-of-the-road quarterback. And it definitely looks like you're going to have to find his replacement during this offseason, right? If you bring somebody in free agency, or if you draft a quarterback, which is most likely going to be the better option. Maybe you get a Michael Penix or a Jaden Daniels. But Geno Smith, when he plays good football, which we haven't seen him do too often this year, Seattle's offense is really impressive. But the thing with Geno Smith is that you got to have an effective run game for him to play at his peak level. Last week, he was really good throwing the football downfield. He had a couple of big throws to DK Metcalf and JSN. The Seahawks have a lot of talent on both sides of the football, but they don't execute to the top of their ability every single week, and they underperform. The 49ers, they already dismantled this team once. It was 31-13 the last time these two teams played, and you got to think that the outcome isn't going to be any different, barring if you get the Geno Smith that you saw last year and last week against Dallas. If Geno Smith can play well, the Seahawks have a chance to win this game. The San Francisco 49ers defense is really talented, but their secondary has been inconsistent this year. And if you can get effective quarterback play, you got a chance to be able to score some points on this defense. You got too much talent at wide receiver for you to not be able to move the ball offensively. It really all just comes down to Geno Smith, and can this offensive line be able to protect them? This offensive line also has played a little bit down this season. Seattle just hasn't played up to the level of talent that they have. Their defense, we thought it was improved, but it still has been bad, like how it has been since they got rid of Richard Sherman, Earl Thomas, and Cam Chancellor left. And the 49ers offensively, they're rolling. Brock Purdy is like poetry in motion when he's in that quarterback. He throws with great anticipation, great timing. This pass rush has to be able to get after him and disrupt his rhythm. He's a rhythmatic passer. When you can get him off base and the quick throws ain't there and you got to force him to try to get big throws downfield, that's how you can get him in trouble. You got to be able to slow down CMC. You see, last week in the second half, the 49ers were really giving it to giving it to Philadelphia in the run game. Seattle has to be able to have the defense that can keep this 49ers offense from being able to get those quick passing plays and for them to be able to get a lot of yards after the catch. That's where they make their living at. I'm taking San Fran to get the win. I doubt Seattle's going to be able to pull off the upset. I just believe that the 49ers are playing their best football right now. Geno Smith had a good performance against Dallas, but I doubt that he's going to be able to replicate that in this game against the 49ers, who right now it looks like they just have all the answers on every side of the football. Give me San Francisco. 28-17 is my final score prediction. Before I move on to our last couple of topics, I got to get a quick sip of water. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and check out this ad from our sponsor. Man, are you tired of looking at your stale, boring-ass room? You want to know a way you can spice your room up and turn that thing into an out-of-this-galaxy experience? Click the link in the description or pinned comment and grab you a Starry Projector Light. The Starry Projector Light comes with 10 changeable color options, a built-in Bluetooth speaker, 12 and 15 switchable constellations, planets, moons, and stars. Transform your room from a depressing wasteland into a vibrant starry wonderland. The Starry Projector Light makes for a great holiday gift for family, friends, and loved ones. Click the link in the description or pinned comment and get one today and transform your room into a breathtaking, starry wonderland. The Buffalo Bills go on the road to Arrowhead to take on Kansas City. This is a playoff game, people. The Buffalo Bills really need to win this game to keep their playoff hopes alive because they're on life support right now. And they haven't played good anytime they've had to go on the road. Meanwhile, Kansas City, they've been limping over the last couple of weeks. They lost to Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers. Jordan Love was destroying this defense. Kansas City's defense was playing some really outstanding football, but they've been hit hard with the injury bug. Buffalo, they are the more talented team coming into this game. Their defense has played really well. The problem with Buffalo defensively is that they don't play good in the full quarter of games. We saw how they fell apart against Philadelphia, especially in overtime. And against Kansas City, the teams that have been able to beat them this season, they've all gotten outstanding play their final drives on defense. They've been able to keep Patrick Mahomes out of the end zone late in the fourth quarter. Can Buffalo be able to have that success late in this game if they got to come down to stop Patrick Mahomes from giving Kansas City the game-winning touchdown on the game-winning drive? Josh Allen, he's played great football this year. The problem with him is that it's been the turnovers that have killed him. But if he can take care of the football in this game, you feel really confident about the Bills' offense being able to move the football on this Kansas City defense. Buffalo's offensive line isn't the same offensive line that it has been in the past. They actually can hold their own against this Chiefs pass rush. My biggest concern for Kansas City is this freaking offense. Their offensive line isn't great. The Buffalo Bills got a really great defensive line, especially when it comes to getting pressure on the quarterback. They got multiple guys on this D line that can get after the passer. Kansas City's wide receivers haven't been great. They don't have a consistent wideout that can be a go-to guy outside of Rashee Rice. Travis Kelce, he's on the decline. He's not an elite player anymore, in my opinion. He's a really good player, but he's not elite. He's not a player that you can look at anymore and say, oh, yeah, like, you got us. You're going to be able to give us 120-plus yards, 10-plus receptions, and 2 touchdowns. We haven't seen the superstar performances out of Travis Kelce this season that we've been accustomed to seeing out of him in the past. Yeah, Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid are still there, and Isaiah Pacheco has been a monster this season for them. Buffalo just has so much going for them when it comes from a talent perspective. You got wide receivers that can separate. Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis. Let's not forget about Dalton Kincaid. You see, if Kansas City had the weapons that Buffalo has offensively, they still would be the best team in the NFL, potentially. The Bills' defense is going to play a really big part in them being able to pull off this win, potentially. You see, Kansas City doesn't have the offense that they've had in the past when they've been able to go up and down the field at will against Buffalo. You see, when the Bills played against Joe Burrow ate him up and spat him out. Kansas City doesn't have those weapons at wide receiver, and they've struggled to get big plays in the passing game. Buffalo's defense should be able to keep them in this game, and Kansas City's defense may give them a little bit of difficulty because Steve Spagnuolo is one of the top 5 defensive coordinators that we have in the league right now. But with the injuries that they have, especially with how talented the Bills are on offense, especially at wide receiver and skill position, plus you got Josh Allen, this seems like a game that Buffalo has everything on their side and able to pull off the win. But this also is Kansas City, and we know how hard it is to win an Arrowhead, especially in December. And one thing that we know about Kansas City is that you're not going to beat them badly where they're not going to have a chance to win this game at the end. You see, Buffalo, they got to be able to close out Kansas City. You cannot allow this game to come down to Patrick Mahomes getting a final possession, because that's where you're going to lose. That's what has hurt Buffalo this season. They not only have beaten themselves, like when they had all those turnovers against the Denver Broncos, but against Philadelphia, they should have won that game. But their defense played small. And that's been the situation way too often with Sean McDermott and this Bills defense. This Bills defense, they play well for 3 quarters, but in the 4th quarter, where they get asked to close out games, they haven't been able to do it. To beat Kansas City, you have to be able to close them out. Philadelphia was able to close them out, even with them having some penalties that went against them. They still were able to get Mahomes off the field, and they were able to win the game. Same thing with the Green Bay Packers. And the Green Bay Packers have been doing this with injuries on that side of the football. If the Packers and the Eagles, who have defenses that are not as good as yours, can find a way to get Mahomes off the field to win this game, you should be able to do so also. And if the Bills defense can't find a way to get it done, that just goes to a bigger conversation that we got to have about why Sean McDermott has to go. And I'm taking the Buffalo Bills to get the win, though. You see, Kansas City, they're out of sorts right now, offensively. And Buffalo offensively should at least be able to score 24 points to win this game. It's going to be a struggle for Kansas City to get to at least 20 points in this game with how well Buffalo's defense has played. And hopefully, the Bills win this game with Josh Allen having the ball in his hands to win it instead of Patrick Mahomes. And I believe that this game will come down to that. But even then, I still think that the Bills defense, they've come up short in the past, but eventually with how much talent they have on that side of the football, even with the injuries that they've suffered, you trust them to be able to find a way to win this game and stop Patrick Mahomes. If Green Bay can do it, fuck it. The Bills should be able to do it too. Jalen Hurts has not played really good this season. Let me start that over. Jalen Hurts has not played well this season. He hasn't played bad, but he hasn't played at the level that he did in 2022. And some people have been wondering what's been going on with Jalen Hurts. He hasn't played at 100%, and he only plays well in the 4th quarter of games. And David Carr, the brother of Derek Carr, who is an analyst for NFL Network, he had a really interesting suggestion about how the Eagles should handle Jalen Hurts' struggles.
I think the only way that they get there, to M. Rob's point, is Jalen is 100% and he is that dynamic weapon in the run game, because that creates your offense on the outside and your one-on-ones. Clearly, Jalen isn't comfortable reading through a defense in a drop-back pass scenario. Some would say he's not even good at it. And I think that when you look at this team, you have to have a serious conversation if you're Philly. And you have to really say, is it better for us to play Marcus Mariota right now and let Jalen get fully healthy? Because I would argue that it does not matter if you're the number 1 seed. Because if the 49ers come into Philly again, they do not care. They do not care. If raining in Philly, doesn't matter. But irrelevant.
You're the coach. You're Nick Sirianni. You go up.
Listen, I get what he's saying. Jalen Hurts isn't fully healthy. Why not rest him for a couple of games? And you may lose a few, but at least you'll have him back at full strength, and you'll have a better chance at making a deeper playoff run and winning more games in the long term versus trying to have him be a warrior playing at 70%. That is a very fair point, but it's still pretty dumb when you look at the bigger picture of it, because a 70% Jalen Hurts is still better than 100% Mariota fully healthy. Marcus Mariota didn't look good in the preseason, and this is an Eagles team that at the end of the day, they're only going to go as far as what Jalen Hurts can take them. And I think that it's better to have him out there, even with him not being fully healthy, than to throw Mariota out there, and he still gives you a better shot than what Mariota is going to give you. Mariota hasn't shown the ability to win in big moments. Jalen Hurts plays his best football in the fourth quarter. When Marcus Mariota was last a starter in Atlanta, every time the game was on the line in the fourth quarter, he folded every single time. David Carr, he made a fair point when he said that Jalen Hurts isn't fully healthy and maybe it would be smart for the Eagles to try to sit him for maybe a game or two for him to get more healthy. But at the same time, they still are in control of the number 1 seed. And that game that you don't have Jalen Hurts healthy for, if you end up losing to Dallas or you lose another tough game like against the Miami Dolphins, then you could end up losing control of that 1 seed. You'd rather have Jalen Hurts battling through his injury, and then you get that 1 seed, you get that first round bye, and you can rest him up then. Or maybe you can rest him up the final week of the season. If you already are able to clinch the number 1 seed and you don't have to play him for too many quarters, you can rest him up for 2 weeks potentially. But this late into the season, you can't afford to have Jalen Hurts sitting when you have a first round bye at stake. You can sit Jalen Hurts later. Jalen Hurts not being healthy still gives you a better chance than a fully healthy Marcus Mariota. You see, Jalen Hurts, the whole thing about him not being able to read defenses and coverages, I think that's mildly overblown. Is he one of the best Is he one of the best processors in the NFL? No, he's not. Is he a Dak Prescott or Joe Burrow? No, he's not. But he's still a really efficient passer, especially when he throws the football downfield outside the numbers. And there's been plenty of big throws that Jalen Hurts has made in the second half of games with the game on the line. It's not about how you start. It's about how you finish. Plus, you don't get the same advantage with him when you go with the QB sneak or the brotherly shove. The brotherly shove is so effective because Jalen Hurts is power squatting damn near 600 pounds. David Carr, the suggestion that he made for the Eagles to sit Jalen Hurts for Marcus Mariota, it made a little bit of sense, but not a lot considering what the Eagles have at stake. You can rest and give Jalen Hurts a break and more time to heal up if you can get that first round bye. Jalen Hurts at 70% is still better than anything that you're going to get out of Marcus Mariota. He still has displayed the ability to extend plays, pick up yards with his legs. He may not have been able to do that at the same degree of efficiency when he was fully healthy. But just sitting him this late into the season, you're going to be asking your team to be okay with taking unnecessary losses. They need him out there so they can get that 1 seed. And with how tough the NFC is, you don't want to have to go on the road and play the Dallas Cowboys for a third time or the San Francisco 49ers again on the road. You want to be able to make sure that you can be held up with Jalen Hurts at least 85-90% ready to go in that game. Sitting Jalen Hurts, you rather take your chances, him being out there and you losing games with him being the starter than him sitting on the bench. Marcus Mariota, he's just going to cause you to lose games because when you're going against some of the best teams in the NFL, you got to be able to have good quarterback play in the fourth quarter. That's what Jalen Hurts has delivered every single week consistently for the Philadelphia Eagles for the most part. The only game that he didn't look good in the fourth quarter was against the 49ers recently. So David Carr, he made a valid point, but the rest of his points didn't make a lot of sense to me. You got to get that 1 seed, sir. Getting the 1 seed is way more important because you can bench Jalen or sit him then the final week of the season, let him heal up, and then you can have him more healthy in the postseason when it matters the most. In the regular season, though, it's a sprint to get to that 1 seed, and it's a marathon. And you got to make sure that you can finish strong and finish through the line. And the only way you're going to do that is with Jalen Hurts grinding it out, playing through those injuries. It sucks that he has to do it, but he's still better right now than what you're going to get out of a healthy Mariota. Game of the week, the Philadelphia Eagles versus Dallas Cowboys. This is a rematch. The Cowboys lost the first game, and Dallas outplayed Philly the first time they faced off against each other. It's just that they had some weird things that happened late. You had Dak Prescott stepping out of bounds, It just was a really off game for the Dallas Cowboys in terms of them being able to execute in crucial moments. And when you play the Philadelphia Eagles, you can't allow this team to get back into the game late in the fourth quarter. That's when they play their best football. They play trash for 3 quarters, and then they display the heart of a champion with the game on the line. The Dallas Cowboys have yet to beat a truly good team this season. Seattle has been the best team that they've beaten up to this point this season. Dak Prescott, I will say this. He's definitely playing at the MVP level. This is the best that I've seen Dak Prescott play since his MVP season. All right. Against the 49ers, he sucked. Against Philadelphia when they played the first time, he outplayed Jalen Hurts. Just him stepping out of bounds on that run play and the 2-point conversion try, that's what cost it Dallas ultimately in the end. You see, Dak Prescott, with the way that Philadelphia secondary has played this season, he should be able to have a great game again. CeeDee Lamb is cooking. He looks like a top 5 receiver. Brandon Cooks is humming. The offensive line at times can be a little bit up and down. But with this Eagles secondary struggling, James Bradbury, Darius Slay looking like they've lost a step, Dak Prescott should have a great game against this Eagles secondary. The key for Philly's defense is that pass rush being able to tee off and hit home. Dallas needs to start this game out fast. They need to start out scoring on their first 4 possessions. If they can get out to a big lead early, you feel really confident about their chances to win this game. Mike McCarthy isn't a bad coach. He's a good coach. He's just not a coach that's good in the big games, especially in the playoffs. If Dallas wants to show that they are legitimate Super Bowl contenders, they need to win this game. They've yet to be in the team that has a record of above 500. Seattle doesn't count. Seattle has lost 4 out of their last 5 games. They're in free fall mode. This is the game that's going to show us everything about the Dallas Cowboys and what they could be potentially in the playoffs. And this is one of the first difficult games that they have to play throughout the month of December. You got to play some more really good teams. Not just the Eagles, but you got the Kansas City Chiefs coming up. You got to play the Buffalo Bills. I mean, this schedule gets really difficult. Well, they don't play the Chiefs, but they got to play the Buffalo Bills, the Miami Dolphins, and the Detroit Lions over the next 3 weeks. So you got to make sure that you can win this game. You win this game, and you take control of the 1 seed in the NFC, which is something that the Cowboys haven't had in a while. Imagine if the Cowboys get that first round bye, that 1 seed. Then that means that the playoffs runs through Dallas. Plus, they will only have to win 1 more game to get to the conference championship, and then they will only have to win that game to get to the Super Bowl. So 2 wins gets you into the big dance. And I know I said they played the Kansas City Chiefs earlier. My fault. They don't play Kansas City this year. I meant the Detroit Lions. But the Dallas Cowboys, they really need to win this game to affirm to everybody that they are legitimate when it comes to their chances of being able to win the Super Bowl, because I still don't take this team seriously. Say what you want about Philadelphia not playing for a full 4 quarters, at least they show it when the game is on the line. This is an Eagles team that's been battle tested. They got close wins against the Chiefs, the Bills. Dallas, they've yet to be able to beat a good team. There's more to prove for Dallas in this game than it is the Philadelphia Eagles. When you think about the stakes in this game, they definitely are huge for both of these teams. But the Eagles have more to lose than what Dallas does. If Dallas loses this game, then they still are in the same situation that they were prior to this game taking place. You see, Philly, they need to win this game so they can get that first round bye. And with Jalen Hurts not being at 100%, it's really important that they're able to win that 1 seed, as we talked about earlier. And Jalen Hurts has to play a complete game. The Dallas Cowboys, regardless of them being unable to beat good teams up to this point, they're still a really talented football team, and you can't have a game when Jalen Hurts only shows up late in this game because it may not be enough. Like we saw against the 49ers, they got out to a slow start, and when they got rolling in the second half, it was too little too late. I'm rolling with the Cowboys to win this game, surprisingly, I believe that the Cowboys are good enough that they should split with the Eagles. I don't know if they cover. This probably could be a game that comes down to 2 points or less, maybe a game-winning field goal by one decides the outcome. The Cowboys are just way too good of a team talent-wise, and I do think from a coaching standpoint, they're on par with what the coaching the Eagles have gotten this year. Their new coaching staff hasn't really been that good. The defense hasn't been good. The offense has been inconsistent. I like Dallas to even the season score up. Give me the Cowboys 28-27 final score prediction for this game. This is it for this episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. If you enjoy, leave a like, subscribe to the channel. Remember that every episode of the channel that's uploaded, or every episode of the podcast that's uploaded on the channel, is available in audio format on all podcasting platforms: Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcast from. You can find the JT Sports Podcast.